It's no driving gloves, everyone. Regular crews here tonight. We got John, Derek, and Will, and
What up?
I think Derek's playing with a lightsaber or something.
No,
Wow.
that's his
I'm trying to
Christmas
use a
tree. Just Christmas
marker,
tree in the
okay?
background.
Jeez.
Okay. Well, kind of.
Oh, the Christmas tree in the background. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's the holiday season. Got to have a Christmas tree.
I got mine too, somewhere here. See? Right here.
Mine's downstairs.
Hey, there it is.
Yeah, John's
Yep.
got a curtain.
Well, we all know who
background.
Scrooge is here.
Yeah,
hmm
he kind of looks like Scrooge.
Two of us
don't
got Christmas trees, and John's got a brown curtain.
he? Ding! Did y'all hear that?
Yep.
That's just the idea. Sorry. Oh.
So you guys been up to anything exciting or
Don't you mean bah humbug?
no? I'm a very
No.
cheerful Christmas person. I love receiving gifts.
Mm-hmm.
Who was I listening to, or where was I hearing the conversation about it's better to receive than to give? Oh, I was listening to some book on tape thing that I was listening to. And the guy pointed out that, everybody says, oh, it's better to receive than to give. No, there's got to be some joy in
No, it's better to
too.
give. No. It's better to give than to receive.
Okay.
That's the saying.
I guess that's the saying. You're right. But his argument was it's just as good to receive, because for it to be a truly happy transaction, both parties should be equally as happy and pleased. So why is it better to give and worse to receive? Both parties are happy. Very complicated stuff that I listened to during the day.
Does it not make you happy if you give someone something and they get joy out of that? Don't you feel good that you've made their life better?
Yes, but on the flip side...
All right, there we go.
No, on the flip side, when somebody gives me something, I'm very happy. I'm just as ecstatic to receive it.
The kid.
Yes, but you don't always give that person something back, do you? So in other words, you're expecting them to feel that it's better to give than to receive.
STDs don't count.
Had to go there.
I say I wouldn't have any experience in that department, Will.
Now, is that a new vehicle from Ford or Dodge? The STD, is that like an LTD or?
Yeah, it's the new. It's actually really the new Ford Mustang is the STD.
Sounds like something. Well, you see, Tesla did the sexy model lineup, and now they're doing the STD model lineup.
Oh.
Well, that's the show. Thanks, folks.
Yeah.
See y'all later.
Now we'll get back to our family friendly conversation. And parents, please mute the last 2 minutes of the conversation.
Because it's always good to put that disclaimer after.
This movie did contain violence.
What were we talking about?
Oh, yeah. What have we been doing? What have you been doing, Derek?
What have I been doing? Working.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. It's pretty much all I do.
Getting ready for some new exhibits and stuff.
Actually, yeah, we since the last time either of you guys have been up, and probably a lot of the listeners that stop by the museum if they ever do, our performance gallery, which for Will and John and anyone that's ever been to the museum before, is the large circular room in the kind of about halfway through the museum that has all the racing Corvettes in it. We have closed that down and gutted it, and it is going to become all new, interactive, a lot of technology involved in the exhibit, projection, touch screens, all kinds of really cool stuff that's going to open up at Bash 2020. So April 23rd, 24th. and 25th of 2020 will be our bash weekend at the museum, and that's when we'll do the ribbon cutting of that new gallery. So
you should have some podcasts.
It's a lot of work.
You should have some people live podcasting from that event.
Yeah, maybe I'll reach out to like Adam Carolla or something, see if we can get a podcast there. Yeah, good idea.
It should work. I mean, I was kind of thinking Spike Ferrison, but hey, whatever you want to do. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, we'd find one of those automotive podcasts that'll come to it. There's got to be one out there somewhere.
I'm sure we could find one.
I've never heard of a podcast. What's a podcast?
It's where
I've never heard of an automobile.
It's where somebody gets on, they record something, Will, and they try to pretend they're a really famous DJ. That's fulfilling their radio fantasies. It's probably never going to catch on. So, kind of like the internet. Actually, it's kind of distributed on the internet every now and then.
Oh, what's the internet?
You'll have to talk to Al Gore. He'll explain that to you.
Hey, Will.
Yeah.
Get a horse.
Yeah.
Why every time somebody says horse, I think Mr. Ed theme. Horse is a horse.
Well,
I think of the podcast that y'all talked about, what y'all talked about last week about how you can have too many of those.
Yeah, I think we can't get into debating that until you actually, catch up and listen to that podcast. So I kind of mentioned it to Sean last week, so the listeners probably heard, but since you guys haven't listened to the podcast, John did a John thing. I bet you can't guess what that was.
You got a new car.
Yep. You know how
John bought a minivan.
I'm cutting back and I'm going to buy something very cheap, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Yeah, that didn't happen. I bought something very cheap. We talked about it. Didn't like it, so I went ahead and bought a new car.
And that is?
Nothing. Literally nothing exciting. Everybody's got one. So, matter of fact, you've experimented with them, Will. We talked about it many podcasts ago because it's got that little rotating shifter in it that's just so freaking annoying.
So you bought a Dodge?
No.
A Ford?
Yep.
A Focus?
Of course I bought a Ford. No, it's a Fusion.
A Fusion, okay.
And we think we said something in the pre-show talking about Cadillac CTSVs, and you said, hey, you can get away with a base car. I said, absolutely not, because this is the first time, and I've really went through every car I've owned, and normally I'm buying at the top of the model. This time I bought a Fusion SE, so they don't make the Sport anymore, which really surprised me, but didn't buy the titanium version or anything. I bought the SE, so it's got some cool stuff on it, but hang on to your hats because 1.5 liters of single turbocharged power, it really doesn't move you.
Oh.
But it's supposed to kind of sort of get almost as good a gas mileage as my old CRX did.
There you go. So how far is it of a drive from your new venture you've got going on?
Well, can't really talk about that this episode. We'll do a press release come early January. But honestly, it's probably 3 to 4 miles from where Barber's was. So
gotcha.
It's kind of like driving the same thing. If I actually have to go there that day. So, but we'll go through that. He kind of wants to do an announcement come January, so we'll
10-4.
We'll wait. I guess I'm important enough to have a press release. Getting up there.
Well, it's really no driving gloves. It's made that happen, but
probably. I mean, you'd be amazed at the conversations the podcast brings up. Boy, we're really not rolling tonight, guys.
Well, I'm waiting for us to get into the topic or for Will to tell us what he's been up to because he's missed the last 25 episodes.
Oh, yeah. Hell, that'd be a whole episode. No, we're
well, good. Then I can go.
We're we're pushing on a project right now that we're actually going to debut in bare metal at the Grand National Roadster Show. So that's been consuming a lot of my time. Of course, the holidays being here, and I have a huge family, so it's we've been doing Christmas since Thanksgiving. So that's been consuming a lot of our time, and just just life and working at the shop every chance I get to make sure we get this Impala ready for Grand National. And we've actually got a booth that we're going to be setting up at Grand National. First time we've ever set a booth up at an indoor car show. So, getting backdrop made and getting literature printed up and designed, and just a lot of things going on. Got a 57 Chevy in the shop that's getting real close to paint, so that's always consumes a lot of time because we got a deadline that we've got to get it painted by because the customer's coming down from New York to see it. So just a lot of stuff going on that has been taking a lot of my time up, and so that's basically it.
So are you actually putting a booth in advertising Big Oak, or is it just...
Yeah, that's what we're doing. So y'all should fly to Grand National. We'll do a live podcast from the show.
I don't know. Did I tell you, Will? I've got hotel reservations for SEMA next year.
You did?
Okay.
Time to get registered?
Just reservations doesn't mean he's gonna actually show up.
And now it's remembering to do the registration part. So
I'll stay on your tail to get that done.
Is this a business trip? Is the podcast paying for it? 'Cause I'll go.
The podcast might go out there, and you pay for it out of your pocket. Then you submit your expenses, and then we see if we can afford it.
There you go.
Okay.
I'm good. I'm good with that. I'll submit my expense for SEMA. Woo!
We just turn it into the Big Oak Garage. They'll cover it. Yeah. They got money to burn.
I'll say it's when No Driving Gloves travels, we travel in style with our $3 a day stipend.
Heck yeah!
And each host contributes each host contributes $1 of that. So
obviously, SEMA's our biggest expense trip of the year.
So what are we going to talk about tonight, guys?
I was going to say, Derek, you've been anxious to jump into this topic. Are we going to get into a topic, or are we just going to kind of wallow around? We're 13 minutes of wallowing, and if anybody's still out there still listening, what
exactly?
What did you want to jump into tonight?
You had the topic. Don't bring this on me.
Yeah, but you were the one who was anxious to get into discussing. And the neat thing about the topic.
All right, hang on. Let me bring up your text message so I can remember what your topic is that I need to bring up.
Well, I'm going to say the topic is great because we can do it now and we can do it next year because there's so much controversy on when does a decade begin and when does a decade end. See, I'm actually one that thinks a decade begins at like 1 and ends at the conclusion of a 0. A lot of people think you begin at a 0 and end at the 9. So obviously we're talking about the most influential cars of the decade are cars that we think have made an impact, whether it be a production car, whether, on Will's side, what car was debuted at a hot rod show that was, maybe changed the world, or even a technology or something that's in the automotive sphere that is potential, what are the biggest things in the automotive world that maybe have happened in the last 10 years that we can come up with or we feel, or, there's been a few things that have went on in the last couple of years. Does anybody want to jump in, or?
Well, I mean, if you wanted me to bring up the topic, we want to talk about what the most influential car of the decade is, John.
Yep, and that's what I said.
Now, to go back to your question about decades, because clearly this show is turning into a non-automotive podcast with the last few episodes we've had.
Yeah, last week was a very
I think the question you have to ask
episode.
yourself is, well, yeah, but we weren't together, so that's why. The simple question you have to ask yourself is, was there a year zero?
Right.
I don't believe there was.
And that's where I'll leave that. So, Will, what do you think the most influential car between 2010 and 2019 was?
Well, there's one car that was built by Troy Trepanier, Rad Rides by Troy, that I don't know what it is about this car. It was absolutely killer when it came out. It's still killer today. I'm pretty sure it came out in 02 or 03.
That's not this decade.
Huh?
That's this century, not this decade.
Yeah, 2010 to 2019.
Right. Okay, well, all right. My bad.
Yeah, but I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I'm going way back.
Is that the Fairlane? No, that's too. I'm trying to remember which one. I'm trying to remember.
It was a 62 Impala called the Chicane.
I remember that one.
Oh, yeah, the car's insane.
But that's a little bit too old, so.
It's too old, so anyway. Yeah, we're just doing the last 10 years. Dang, I'm getting old. Whew.
Yeah, college was what, 20 years ago? High school.
Let's not talk about it.
Some of us were 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, it's just because you're old.
Got to be something. Well, I guess I can quit Googling the Rad Rods by Troy, since that was almost a pre-internet car.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Okay, strike one for Will. How about you, Derek?
Yeah, go ahead. Pass me up.
And the Model A was last century.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, 2010 to 2019, not 1910 to 1919.
See, I thought that's where we were going.
Sorry. In that case, the Chevy 490. Anyway.
Just trying to can't use the podcast for a personal financial gain there, but Derek.
I've got one.
I'm not selling anything. I have never sold anything via this podcast. Had advertisements for job openings at my shop on this podcast. Anything? I'm pretty sure it's the other hosts of this podcast that might do that.
Hey, I lay out a solid $20 a month for this podcast. So.
Oh, he's good. So, what am I? Is it just anything, or are you sticking me with like production vehicles that have come out? What is my? Because yes. You talked about Will talking about in his industry.
No, Will could. I don't care if Will thinks that the 2016 Impala SS was the greatest car of the decade. That's fine. I mean, if whatever. I mean, I'm sure we're going to each get 2 or 3 stabs at this.
Well, I can tell you the greatest barn find of the decade was a 1923 Peerless Model 66 that was found in a barn in South Bend, Mishawaka, Indiana. That was by far the best barn find of the decade.
And who found that, and where is the car now?
I believe I located that, and it's in my garage.
And see, here we are self-serving, where I'm sitting here thinking, some of the greatest advancements in, the last decade, really car-wise, I'm thinking,
All right, then
Apple CarPlay.
how about if you're gonna go there, how about was it the 2015? I'm trying to remember what year it was introduced. Was it 14 or 15? Ford F-150s that moved to all aluminum, panels and everything.
I believe it was 15.
I thought we were talking about the best stuff of the decade.
Well,
if we're talking about innovation.
Well, innovation don't mean it's good.
Everybody's following Ford's lead because doesn't General Motors have aluminum trucks now? Or
yep,
I still think it's stupid.
Aluminum sports cars are okay. Carbon fiber.
I agree with that, but not a work truck.
Mm-hmm.
They look like teetotal hell in 2 years.
Yes, but Elon Musk is trying to take care of that with titanium.
and glass that don't break.
Hey, what about in that case, what about the Tesla Model 3?
Now, see, you can't. I don't think you can have a conversation about automobiles and automotive industry of the last 10 years without Tesla being a major player. I almost think the Model S was probably more prevalent than the Model 3. I've seen arguments for the Model 3 because it kind of brought Tesla technology to the masses. But you would have never had a Model 3 with,
and that's what I was thinking,
without the acceptance of the Model S, and then the ensuing.
Very true.
We wouldn't have the Porsche Taycan coming out. We wouldn't have the Mustang Mach-E. We wouldn't have the Cybertruck. We wouldn't have.
Wait. The Mustang Mach STD.
the Mustang STD.
No, the Shoei.
Yeah. Yes, the Shoei.
No, the Shoei.
I like STD better.
And here's our parental warning after the fact again.
Yes.
Yeah, and
we're gonna have to rate this episode M.
I think
for maturity.
I think we, going on the Tesla line, you look at everything that's come out of Tesla, even if it kind of, sort of, maybe existed, pre-2010, but you have over-the-air updates for your cars now. You have, internet-connected cars. You have, the electric cars. You have just this acceptance of this whole new technology. So I think the Tesla is an easy one on that. And to kind of play off the same game, I kind of think that the Porsche 918 Spyder is a very influential car when you get into the hypercar realm, because it really started to introduce the dual power to supercars and hypercars, where you have a gasoline motor and then electric motors to assist, which is now been utilized by McLaren, Ferrari. There's another one that's coming to mind, but I can't think of it. But the NSX. It's just all, I guess, electric drivetrains might be the biggest change to the automotive industry, with everything and everyone playing the game. I think we had the Chevy Volt come out this decade. We had with its innovations, and here again we're here in 18 and 19 with the Chevrolet Bolt, the Nissan Leaf, all these cars that now are getting 300 miles on a charge, which for 95% of the population is a very reasonable charge and distance to travel. to throw out another big change to the automotive industry, in my opinion, of the last 10 years is the Fiat buyout of Chrysler. That kind of started.
Whoa. We're talking about cars here, not companies.
Car companies, and you have to look at with that buyout, it's brought Alfa back to the U.S. market. It's changed Maserati.
I do like that.
It's, and going back to last week's episode and what Will mentioned, it kind of created a lot of the horsepower wars with the American cars. First we put out the Hellcat with 707 horsepower, and then, General Motors has to top it and Ford has to top it. And then, you get the Demon, and then you get the Red Eyes. And, now we're having, American cars that are 800, pushing 900 horsepower. And and to take my last two suggestions and combining it, the rumor is the C8 ZR1 is going to be gasoline electric hybrid with 900 plus horsepower. So I think, all of that comes into play. And to me, FCA kind of restarted that game. Cars were getting faster and horsepower was there, but I think the Hellcat in the middle class genre really opened up that horsepower war. Ferrari and Porsche, and if you're buying $500,000 exotics, they've always, they've been playing in that 600, 700 horsepower realm for 15 years. But for the average Joe who, a $60,000, $70,000 Hellcat's not out of line for a good portion of the population. It's still an expensive car and it's an expensive toy, but I think a lot of people bought base Challengers just because of the fact the Hellcat existed, and I gave them the toys.
Yeah, I wonder how many base Challengers have been made to look like Hellcats. I know I've seen several.
There's been a couple that have popped up on the Birmingham Mopar Owners Club page at various used car dealers that are 6 cylinders made to look like Hellcats. Because if the original Hellcat wasn't wide body or anything, changed rims and changed some badging, and you can claim you've got a Hellcat from the exterior.
That's right. Well, going back to the hot rod side of things, most people automatically think, influential hot rods of the decade, whatever. They automatically probably go and think about the Riddler. So going back on the last 10 years of the Riddler, there's two cars that really stand out. One of them was an Oldsmobile built by a shop in Texas that was really, really cool. And then another one was a 40 Ford built by Cal Automotive Creations, Andy Leach's shop out of Omaha, Nebraska. And if you were, let's just say you were to compile the last 10 Riddler winners, those two cars would stand tall. And to me, the 40 Ford that Andy Leach built would probably take that trophy if there was one. If you hadn't seen this car, it's a 40 Ford Coupe, so it's a car that don't take a whole lot of modifying to make it super cool anyway. But they cut this thing every which way but Sunday, and to improve the lines on a car like that is, it's playing with fire. And man, they did it and nailed it, and it's just a super, super killer piece that, 20 years from now, it's still going to be as cool as it was in 2013 when it won the Riddler. So as far as hot rods go, that car there is one that will definitely leave a mark on this decade. And probably the second one to me that, and I'm not a big muscle car guy. I appreciate them. We've built some, but the car that the Ring Brothers had at SEMA this year, holy cow, man! That thing just stepped the notch up even higher, and I know it's towards the latter part of the decade or whatever, but that car would probably go down as one of the most influential, coolest pieces of this decade in the hot rod side of things.
Well, you brought up the Ring Brothers there, and for some reason, there's been a lot more chatter about the Ring Brothers in the last couple of years. Some of the stuff they've done, and it's getting outside of the automotive realm. I mean, if we sit here and we can talk some builders that are really tight in the industry that the general public doesn't know. I would say Chip Foose in the early part of the century, in the 2000 to 2010 realm, he was kind of the guy. Do you think the Ring Brothers are kind of that shop? I mean, because they don't have the TV show and things like that. And I want to discount. We'll throw out all the TV shows. Otherwise, you'd probably say Richard Rawlings is probably the most famous, quote, custom car builder of the last 10 years. But do you think the Ring Brothers really came on and have really helped guide some of the styling in the last portion of the decade, at least, and maybe getting into the next decade? Will they overlap?
No.
Oh.
In the beginning of the decade, they have put. You can take that whole pro touring show car craze that you see now. I'm not talking autocross cars. I mean the pro touring show car stuff. Okay, you can pinpoint that straight to the Ring Brothers. I mean, those guys took that to a level that nobody had ever seen before. And this is 15 years ago, maybe even longer than that Mike and Jim started pushing that envelope, and they just keep taking it to a different level. And everybody is playing second fiddle to the Ring Brothers in that genre of car.
But they're really...
Now, don't get me wrong. Go ahead.
I was say, but they're really coming on, and like I said, they're becoming known by non-car people, and I think that's what really builds the street rods, and they're getting emulated by up and coming shops more and more. Yes, they've been around for 20 years, but it took them so many years. They might have come on with the exact same thing that they're selling now, but it took many years to get that styling and get that to move the industry their direction.
I think it's been longer than a couple of years. Of course, I'm in the industry. I see it every day, so it's kind of hard to not see it from my side. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the Ring Brothers have been influencing other builders and home builders pretty strong for the last 10 years. I guess if you had to really do the car builder hot rod shop of the decade, they would definitely be in the very, very top of that. I mean, they've been doing it. They've been doing it a long time, and they've been influencing other shops for a long time. And maybe from the outside world looking in, they're just now getting a name outside of the industry. But as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I don't see it that way because like I said, I'm in the industry, but you know, maybe that's the case. I don't know.
Yeah, you're so far outside of my world. I have no comments on this. I mean, the Ring brothers, more power to them for what they're doing, but yeah, I don't know much about them. So,
Well, it's not my style of car. You know what I mean? That's not the style of car that Big Oak Garage builds. Um, but the appreciation that I have for for that style and for their work and for their creativity, for their design ideas, dude. I mean, I can't say nothing but good things about it. And Mike and Jim are two of the coolest dudes on the planet. You know, I mean, they're just awesome people. And they build cool cars, man. Whether you like that style or not, you walk around one of their cars and just about every single one of their builds, you got to walk around them 30 times. And every time you walk around it, you see something different. You see something different. You see something different. And you may not take some of their ideas and build a car like theirs, but it may be the shift knob that you like that'll work on a build that you're doing that you do one like, or it could be the gas pedal, the brake pedal, the clutch pedal, or a dash knob, or it could be anything that you take influence from that you could create on your own specific build that's not even that styling. You could take a part off of a Camaro that they built that may work on a 32 Ford. So they're just extremely creative and cool people.
I guess it's rotated back around to you, Derek. I stole Tesla from you, so what are you seeing?
I was gonna say what. Why is it back on me? I started this conversation with the Ford F-150 aluminum, moved to all aluminum panels, and then I got Tesla stolen from me.
And then Will and I talked the Ring brothers, and hence it's back to you.
And then I fell asleep during the Ring brothers conversation, took a little nap. Well, geez, I'm trying to think. What else came out in the last 10 years? Ooh.
How could, I mean, I think it's kind of hard to have this conversation without mentioning the C7 Corvette.
I was actually just going to go there because I was trying to figure out if we talk about the C7, the seventh generation, but which.
The ZR1?
I mean, the ZR1 was an insane. Yeah. Yes, it's only a 1-year build. It is the most powerful production Corvette ever produced. 755 horsepower, 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. I mean, just ridiculous. But if you go back to the introduction and in the first, year, 2014, when they just had the Stingray, that still was an insane production car. I mean, it was unlike anything. I mean, it was unlike the C6.
Right. And
the C6 was impressive. The C7 was badass.
Oh, I agree. The C7 Corvette, the ZR1 is I mean, to me, it'll go down in history as one of the coolest, baddest Corvettes ever. and it one of the reasons they moved to the mid-engine platform is they honestly felt that they've done just about everything they could possibly do, just say with a base Corvette, to do what it was doing, and they had to add all of the aero package and the wing and all of that stuff to keep more horsepower for the handling capabilities and keep the thing on the ground, which was the ZR1.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, Taj himself will say, they basically pushed the envelope on what they could do with the platform of the C7 as a front engine sports car. I mean, they pushed the ultimate limit.
You can call the C7 ZR1 the baddest front engine car on the planet. Is that safe to say?
Boy,
production car.
I have to be careful. I have to be careful here.
Production.
Production. Let's go production car. Yes, I could say that. Where I see someone challenging that is, and it is a I guess I don't know the answer. I think it's technically a non-production car, but I would think that some people would challenge that with the what they call it, the Valkyrie. It was Valkyrie, right? The Aston Martin.
Well, that's I think
especially built race car.
I think Will's statement could really come into
it was a question. It was a question, not a statement.
Because I mean, you can start playing, when you start getting into exotics and things like that. You're going to get people that are saying, and why am I drawing a blank? Ferrari 599. A lot of the Astons. Trying to remember some of the other front engine V8 stuff. I mean, even some of the Audi stuff. It all depends on your taste and what you want to do with the cars. I mean, a Mopar guy is going to tell you, no. That, the Demon was the ultimate front engine V8 car. The Ford guy is going to tell you, no. The GT500 with its flat, or 350 with the flat plane crank, blah, blah, blah. That's the way to, that was the ultimate front engine. But
hang on, I have to correct myself because I said the wrong name of Aston Martin. I said the Valkyrie, which was their exotic crazy thing.
Yeah.
What I was thinking of was the Vulcan.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Sorry, John. Go ahead.
No, that's pretty much where I got is.
Yeah, but we all know that the ZR1, the 2019 ZR1 Corvette, no Mustang holds a candle to that car.
No.
No production Mustang.
I think it gets back to when you're talking, go back to the old Fox body Mustangs. I don't think anybody on the planet would deny that it was the best bang for the buck. It was $19,000 in 1990 for a Mustang LX 5-liter, maybe just over 20, where even a Z28 Camaro or a WS6 Trans Am, they were pushing mid-30s. And I think the Corvette falls into that. I think bang for the buck for the ZR1, you'd be really hard-pressed to beat it until if you want to say, that, and if you want to say the C7, really the introduction of the C8 might be kind of news of the decade too. Obviously it was introduced this decade, and it just kind of brings a whole new level to the American sports car, and might be I've made the comparison that it could be the game changer to the supercar world, much the same way that the NSX was 30 years ago. the NSX woke Ferrari and Lamborghini and all those guys up, and they started to build quality things. Now the Corvette's going to wake people up going, wait, I can get this performance for 60 grand, or say even go to the ZR1 version for 125 grand, which is a third of the cost of a decently equipped Ferrari 488. With this,
what didn't Lexus make a front engine rear wheel drive super type of car?
Well, they've done a couple. You're probably thinking the LFA.
LFA,
lease only $400,000 car. But
it was V10.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was a 10 or an 8, but it was it was instantly bought up by collectors, and everybody put them away, and 6 people drove them. And I think there's still reports of 12 or 13 of them brand new on showroom floors that have never been sold. I don't, the LFA, I think it's just one of those, Lexus did it to say this is what we could do, and it was followed up by, the game you could play, and I can't think of what the model is. I'm thinking the RX 350. No, it's just the Lexus RX F-Type.
Right,
$100,000 or something, and it's a heck of a performance car and a heck of a luxury car. I recently drove the RX 350 F-Type, but not the official RX F-Type. And two totally different cars.
How did we forget about the Viper?
Well,
because the Viper was introduced in 1989.
Yeah, but we're talking about
was delivered to company in
delivered to consumers.
Are you talking about the
1992? But
93.
It was canceled. 1992 was the first production.
Yeah. But when did they stop making the Viper though?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. They stopped in what?
2017.
Oh, wait. No, they stopped in 2008, and they brought it back in.
They brought it back.
Right. So we're talking, baddest front engine rear wheel drive car. No. Obviously, the baddest one on the planet was going to be made this decade. But was what did they call their racing Viper that you could buy? ACR or
the
something
ACRs.
Like that? Wasn't that a production?
ACRs, yep.
Was that considered a production car? I think that may give the ZR1 maybe a run for its money.
And see, the problem with the Viper to the Corvette, in my opinion, and as a Viper fan, the Viper from day one, and I've said it many times, the reason, there's two things that happen when you get into a Viper. You try to stay alive, and the car tries to kill you.
Yep.
Even in the newest ones, they do take some talent. Now, in the right hands, it is a monster. The Corvette, I think, is still a little bit more forgiving. It's not as harsh. It's not as brazen. I've got one or two friends with a 19 ZR1, and they're daily usable cars where Vipers just it's like saying a Lotus Elise is an everyday car. It is to a diehard car fan, and I think the Viper's the same way. It's a heck of a car, and it would it'll run right with the best cars on the planet, the ZR1 to the Ferraris to whatever you want to put it up against on the Nürburgring. But I don't know. I probably have to.
You got to give the nod to the ZR1.
Exactly. That's how I was just going to conclude that.
Yeah, got you.
And where was it? But you got me to say Lotus, and they introduced their Evora in 2010, which was an interesting car, and it's taken 9 years for them to potentially really get it right. And I keep reading and seeing little articles, and they build like 18 of them a year and sell them in this country, and every one's a custom color and things like that. But I keep seeing more and more Porsche Carrera, Porsche 911 drivers trying the Evora and liking it. So I don't know if that's really a big game changer. The
kind of looks like a Porsche.
It's a mid-engine Porsche, and the Cayman to me really came on, and you got the GT4, and Porsche started to let Porsche develop the Cayman and the way the Cayman should have been built. I mean, I've always felt the Cayman could run circles around a 911 if you let the Porsche engineers go crazy with it. And I think Porsche slowly let them have more and more. Granted, you're not going to get a Cayman that, outperforms a GT2, but that's still, I think, Porsche holding it back. So I think overall it's been a great 10 years for performance cars. We haven't really touched luxury other than, your mention of the Lexus, but Lexus has really brought a lot of performance back to the, that realm and that market. They've kind of always played in it. Mercedes is, the AMG stuff they're doing now, and then, AMG GT. There's not a lot of people that get to play with $125,000, $150,000 plus cars, but they, there's this luxury level. I mean, Audi's done a really nice with their RS packages and things. So overall, I'm going to say the decade's been pretty good to cars, everything. Now, let's quickly go with the question: what's the worst thing that has come about in the automotive industry or with cars in the last 10 years? Okay.
The freaking price.
Reality TV shows started before 2010, didn't they?
Yes. I'm going to go. I personally, for me, the belief of the autopilot system and self-driving cars where the driver has no responsibility.
I agree with that.
And a lot of the safety stuff that's really been added in the last 10 years. They've made the cars better, but they've made the drivers lazier. And all it's going to do is become lazier and lazier and lazier. And I heard a really good discussion today that we're going to get the technology right. And we're going to have cars that can drive themselves and not crash into things and run people over, and, that we can get in and sit down and go somewhere. But they pointed out, we'll have that technology, but what we don't have is the technology to keep us busy, because there's going to be this transition as you get used to the car driving you somewhere and you not having to drive it. I mean, some people are going to adapt really quick, and they'll be on their iPhone or their, tablet or whatever instantly. But
they already are. Just look at Will's video. I mean,
I'm kind of thinking my drive home from Montgomery today, but no police officer was listening to this, right? But it, I think, we've talked about it in other shows, I think that's the worst thing to come out of the decade as far as, in the automotive arena, is that we've taken the driver out of driving.
Well, I'll tell you something else that I don't like is this whole going to the diesel side of things, is the whole DEF fluid, that is just absolutely horrific. It's really, really tough on its components. There's always problems with it. And it it's just an added cost, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me on the whole, whatever you want to call it, cleanliness of the environment or whatever. get it right before you introduce it. I mean, we've had more problems with DEF crap on our diesel trucks, our tow trucks, and it's one thing right after another, and really cracking down on people that's deleting them and all that stuff. And it's actually a better vehicle when it's deleted than what it is when it comes from the factory with all that crap on it.
Well, I mean, think about it. It's kind of like the introduction of the catalytic converter in the 1970s.
Right.
Or the smog systems. It was when they brought them out, they kind of sucked.
Yep.
And they lost horsepower. You had a lot of problems with them, especially the smog systems, those AIRs, and all that stuff that was involved. But it's like you say. I mean, just get it right and then bring it out rather than. I think that's maybe one of the problems. It's much longer running than this decade, but it's a problem in the auto industry where bringing something out like that, having problems with it, passing the cost on to the consumer while you get it figured out is I think one of the reasons people have some hard feelings against the automotive industry. Prices are going up. They're making specialty parts and tools so your car can only be worked on at a dealership. Now we can slip back to that all aluminum Ford F-150 that they have to have a dealer body shop has to have a special set of tools to be able to work on the panels and all that. So that's a big downside to me, is the more and more we get towards the proprietary components and parts and pieces and just everything that they're doing on the automobile now, that just forces the consumer to take it back to the dealership for any type of service. And they keep jacking the cost of that up. And it's not conducive to most people to own a brand new car that they have to take back to the dealership for the repairs, because it's just too expensive.
I agree.
The key is, and this isn't an advent of the decade. It's something I think the automotive manufacturers put into play in the early 80s. And this is them planning 40 to 50 years into the future. And that goes back to leasing. They want you to get a new car. They want you to lease it for 3 years. They want you to give it back to them so they can keep the best cars on the used market, recycle the old ones, keep you constantly making a payment to them. But the car is always under warranty, so you don't have to worry about fixing them, etc. And everything out there, I mean, I could have bought, and it cost a couple $1,000 extra with all the deals, but I can buy, even on my Fusion, I could have bought all the maintenance, up front, so it's included in the payment. So I make a car payment every month, and I don't have to worry about any repairs or anything. And granted, I buy my cars because of the potential number of miles I put on them. But if I didn't put the mileage on, leasing would be very attractive to somebody like me, just because of how often I flip cars and move cars. And you really have to have a good understanding of leasing before you get into leasing. But what you're saying is the fear of the repair, and the manufacturers would rather you always have a new car, and I think they'd love to get rid of the used car market. My personal opinion, but now I'm going back. I yelled at Will for going back to 2003. Now I'm going back to what I feel is like 1978, 1980. So.
We can take it all the way back to the 19... Oh, shoot. Going to forget what year it was, but stepping back even further into the 1920s, if I recall correctly, GM's whole move of planned obsolescence and a car for every purse and purpose. So it started a long time ago.
I'm going to take that.
Why is it every time I talk about the 1920s, it goes silent?
Well, it's because we've talked about the 1920s, or the 1920s now have been talked about for 90 years. I'm going to take the long silence delays and the board timer being 101, 08, 09, 10. We're at our hour kind of cap. Don't know if we have much else to do on this topic. This episode's obviously releasing Christmas week. We're going to do our best to get together next week to record an episode to release on New Year's week.
Woo!
We're going to figure out. We'll at least get one episode out in the next 2 weeks. We're really going to try to do an episode a week and not miss, so that you'll get one on whatever that would be, the 30th and the 5th, 6th, I don't know, 4th. But we're going to try to stay to our weekly schedule, but we might miss a week to record, just because we do want to take a Christmas holiday, and Wednesday's our recording day, and the holidays are Wednesdays this year. So we'll see what we can do. Till next time, everybody, we'll have some topics, send in some topics. Be sure to subscribe. Hey, if this is coming out Christmas week, tell your friends about your favorite podcast, No Driving Gloves, and get your friends and family to subscribe while you're having the Christmas, is it Christmas ham, Christmas turkey, Christmas dinner, Christmas,
whatever you want to eat. It doesn't matter.
Vegan burger, whatever.
Hot dogs.
I don't care what you eat. Just send us some Christmas gifts.
There you go. Cookies.
And I'll be honest, the best Christmas gift is a subscriber. Doesn't cost you anything. Hit that subscribe button. We're out there. Search for us in your favorite podcast catcher.
Just grab all your family members' phones and just subscribe.
Subscribe everybody.
Yeah. That's the easiest way. Till then, if we don't, I'm trying to think. If we don't talk to you before, everybody have a good Christmas. And if we don't talk to you before, have a happy New Year. And we'll either see you one more time in 19, or otherwise we'll go ahead and potentially begin this new decade, depending on whether or not you believe there's a year zero. I'm out of here tonight, guys. Good night.
Later.
Hey, Will.
Hey.
Merry Christmas and Zamboni.
Oh, Lord.